is going on, everybody? I hope you guys are having a great day and things are going well for you in your lives. Um, if you watched the first video, which was actually the first video I made, basically for this topic, if you watched it, thanks for checking it out, and thanks for checking this one out. If it's your first time here, greetings. My name is Dominic Luck, and what I'm doing with this is just kind of sharing some of the things that I experienced in my journey to awakening and becoming consciously aware of my surroundings and myself, which is another very important thing, probably the most important thing in this journey. But yeah, so basically it's not, I really don't have a specific format or structure for this. So what I've decided I'm going to do is basically just share, kind of try to tell the story of from the beginning of when I started noticing changes and things happening, or kind of becoming more aware of things, and then kind of just slowly bringing it up to this point, and also kind of just sharing some things I learned along the way. So that's what I'm going to do. Like I said, I don't even know if people are going to be watching this. It's kind of for myself as well. So if anybody watches it and gets any benefit out of it, great. That's hopefully what this will do. But let's see, where did I leave off? I think my last video. So basically, being as though that was basically the intro video, the last one I did, pretty much just started at the beginning. But I guess I'll start there with when I was about 25. One good thing that I can say that my mother did for me was she gave me a book. She passed this book on to me. And it was Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. Now, at this point, I was already kind of looking into things and starting to ask questions about what was going on around me. But this book was like, for me, it was my just kind of like my introduction into the whole in-depth processes that go on in our bodies and in our minds, and just how things work. It's an amazing book. If you haven't read it, you should check it out. I mean, it's so much information in there, and it just put a lot of things together for me. From what I can remember, it was a pretty thick book, so I mean, you kind of have to either enjoy reading or start enjoying to read, or there's audiobooks too. Either way, whatever works best for you, I'd check that out. But I remember when I was done reading that book, I believe it was somewhere near the end, he said something along the lines of, or maybe he quoted it, I'm not sure, but he said, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that just resonated with me in a way that I was just like, wow, I literally had to stop reading at that point and just kind of think about that for a second, because that's when it just seems so right. I don't know how else to say it. It just seemed like, wow, that was what's going on, and it made so much more sense for me that looking at it that way, as us being spiritual beings having a human experience. We're here from somewhere else having an experience as a human. So really, pretty much any way, almost any of your beliefs, I guess, unless you're like atheist, any of your beliefs has some higher being or some other place, where we possibly go. So it wouldn't be far-fetched to think we're, from another place, experiencing this, and then we go back to that, or, to another place. So however you view it, it just made sense for me in so many ways. And that really, I guess it was a paradigm shift. I guess that's what you'd call that. Like right at that moment, that just shifted things for me in a way that allowed me to view things differently. And, I'm not going to say it wasn't a struggle, kind of, let's see, applying this new philosophy to my life just based on the, environment that you're in. You got to try to fit in. It's hard. It seems like people aren't too prone to liking change. I mean, when something changes, some people get confused. They don't really understand what's going on. They're used to things being a certain way. So, with that actually ties into something, that happened to me recently. The time that I was taking to read back then was a very important step for me. Taking the time to step out of, all the electronics and apps and social media and all that stuff, to kind of step away from it, even radio, just everything, just to step away from all that and actually think about just your life really and what's going on with it and how you feel about certain things. So that's kind of what I was doing at that point. I kind of stepped away to myself and used that book as kind of my teachings, my guidance, and it was very helpful. And something that just recently happened to me was I was editing a picture, I believe, for something I'm working on, and I'm working on it, and then I try to look something up online, and I noticed my internet connection isn't working. So what's going on? It's like, I know I paid the bill, so it's not that. So I kind of mess around with a few things to see if I can get it working again, but it's out. So I check my phone, and there's outage. So I'm like, all right, no big deal. Luckily, the software I was working on wasn't something that was going to be interrupted by, it was offline basically, so I didn't have to worry about online until I was ready to put the picture up. So I worked on that for a while, and then once I was done, I kind of sat back, and because I was not so flooded with distractions, because even when you have, you have to have a pretty streamlined information stream to only really be getting the stuff that you want to see, to not get distracted. Because even, you know, even even on YouTube, if you're watching, you have some things that you're kind of watching your spare time or your time when you're relaxing, and then some more serious stuff. You could plan on going to do some serious stuff and then see, oh wow, I didn't know that video was up, and then you can easily get distracted. So you really have to almost separate. That's kind of what I do, is separate my accounts. I have a kind of more of a focused, um, account, YouTube account, which is this one, Voice of Vision, and then I have other ones where it's more like general. Maybe if I'm in the gaming mood or just chilling out watching some car videos or something like that, because I know if I mix them together, I'm going to get distracted. But anyway, back to the story. So I realized that I didn't have internet, so I was like, all right, well, what can I do? Luckily, I've experienced not having internet and phone, so it's not a huge deal. I read and do other things that can keep me occupied. So, but that's something to think about too. If you think about that, if you can sit there and imagine that, and you imagine, like, what would I do if I didn't have phone and power? And you can't imagine what you do, you might want to, kind of reevaluate things. Because if you can't live without electricity and, I guess, a phone and things like that, I understand you want to keep in touch with people, but if you seriously almost go stir crazy when you don't have any, electrical devices or connection to your social media or whatnot, you should, it'd be helpful. I'm just saying, you can live your life how you want, but it'd be helpful if you maybe spent a little time to yourself, take maybe 5-10 minutes out, step away from it, and then use your brain, think a little bit, see what's floating around in there, without external stimulation. But yeah, so that's basically what I ended up doing with my power out. I ended up pulling out. I have, unfortunately, I'm not the best note keeper, so I have books with random notes kind of everywhere. I'm getting better at keeping it organized, but it's how it is for now. But fortunately, I kept a lot of books that I've had from those times when I was, in my mid-20s. And I happened to pull one of those out and see some things that I wrote down, which were interestingly relevant to what I was doing now, and just gave me, it kind of reawoke some ideas that I had in that time that maybe now I'm more, in a position to follow through with some of those ideas. So it really sparked this whole different thought process than what I normally would have been doing if I stayed online. I might have got distracted and started doing something else. But just that, having that time, that night, actually, it was the rest of the night I finished out, and then I ended up reading some things and really getting some really good insight. If you haven't read it, you should read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by, damn, I forgot the author. But anyway, just use the title, and you'll find that book. Another great book that even if you only read a couple pages a day, man, you'd get some real great knowledge out of that, and things that you can apply to your life. And I would definitely apply them to my life, because that's the next biggest thing after you learn, is actually applying it. But I guess the moral of the story is when you take the time to sit back and really allow your review or maybe evaluate what's going on in your mind. I think that's a very really important, interesting thing that I found this night was just sitting there and seeing what was floating around in there. Like what thoughts was I thinking about? I mean, and even when you do that, you can almost really see what's going on in your subconscious mind. You know, the part of our brains that we don't necessarily have access to that allow our blood to flow and our heart to beat. You know, and even our eyes to blink without us thinking about doing it. That part that has that programming in it, like maybe that core programming of keeping us alive. Back in that part of your brain, there's a lot of things that were also programmed in at childhood based on your parents and your environment. That being as though our parents in our environment aren't always correct, are worth evaluating as adults instead of just holding on to a lot of those things. And I'm not saying you have to change all of them, but it's good to evaluate it from a perspective of an adult or even a person, even after a week, you can look back and say, and evaluate your life. I tend to do it daily, just kind of evaluate interactions and things that I did, and maybe see if there were some things that I could have done better, or it's just I don't know. I think that makes you a better person to constantly be evaluating yourself, fine tuning who you want to be, in your life. So, yeah, that's just another thing that I've experienced and I've learned and I'm applying to my life, and it's really nice. It's a really nice feeling when you can kind of understand what's going on in your own mind, in your own world, and address those things and give attention to what needs to be addressed and taken care of, so that things can continue flowing smoothly. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're going on almost 15 minutes now, so I think I'm just gonna end it there. Just kind of wanted to share a little bit more with you guys, and hopefully, you know, you get something out of this. Maybe you've experienced something like this, and maybe you can relate. If you can, I'd love to hear your story. So leave a comment. Let me know what you guys are experiencing, because I know I'm not the only one out there. Thankfully, that's going through this process. I think we all can learn from each other, and yeah, hopefully that's what we can all do. So until next time, you guys keep it moving, stay positive, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Pay attention who you're getting close with. Distance yourself from negative energy. Voices in my head, they say it's meant for me. I